Uh-oh.
Towards the end of the previous section, Part 211C, I briefly described the way in which both institutionally sanctioned racism and specifically racist laws against black people in America were largely defeated by a popular movement of human rights activists, passionately supported by a very considerable number of white people as well as the black people themselves. Many of them were, as we have already said, inspired by the highly relevant music Strange Fruit, that was made particularly famous by the wonderful and emotionally charged singing of Billie Holiday.
Southern trees bear a strange fruit, blood on the leaves and blood at the root, black bodies swinging in the southern breeze, strange fruit hanging from the poplar tree.
It is important to note that the formerly racist and discriminatory laws of America had never been considered holy or required as part of any religious observance. Such laws were not mandated by the Christian faith. There are no discriminatory, racist, or aggressive verses in the New Testament inciting such cruelty against any race, color, or people of other or of no faiths. As promised, I shall now talk about a second, more recent success story against institutionalized racism and blatantly racist laws that had caused so much human misery and had previously seemed unassailable. It is the case of South Africa's apartheid system, which was also overturned. They enforced the rules of apartheid, meaning separation. That is, the separation of the white and black peoples into two groups, whereby the blacks were subservient to the whites. They had even more racist laws than those of the USA. While their racism in the United States was by the white immigrants against black imported slaves, the racism of South Africa was even more immoral, if that is possible, because the whites were the immigrants, while the blacks were being discriminated against in their own native lands. This time, it was the world community, using a mixture of sanctions and direct action to support local campaigners that led ultimately, and after many years and much pain and suffering, to the collapse of the apartheid system. Finally, the black South African people were able to take charge of their own government and at least free it from those many racially discriminatory and repressive laws that had been ruthlessly imposed upon them by foreigners. Once again, the racist laws of apartheid were not believed to be sacred or ordained by the Christian religion, but were actually created by bigoted and self-interested people merely to suppress and control another human group. In both the cases of the USA and South Africa, their people were able to overthrow racist and discriminatory laws that were actually on the statute books for decades, if not centuries. They were then able to mature, evolve, and progress by unshackling themselves from immoral, unjust, and discriminatory man-made laws. Let me now put them in historical context. American slavery started with the Spaniards after 1492 and continued until the American Civil War that ended slavery in 1865. This, of course, did not stop racial discrimination till the early 1970s. Hence, institutionalized racism in the USA lasted approximately 500 years. I would like to point out to you that the American Civil War fought over the issue of slavery. 1861 to 1865 caused the death of almost 618,000 mostly white Americans, a figure that easily exceeds all the losses of the USA in all its subsequent wars put together. Racial segregation in South Africa began in colonial times, late 19th century, but apartheid, as an official policy, was introduced following the general election of 1948 till 1994. Hence, the total period of racism against blacks in Africa did not last more than 200 years. I would like now to share with you a racism and discrimination on a much more colossal scale than that of the Americans and Europeans combined. It is the racism and discrimination of the Arabs and Muhammadan Islam. It is a fact that slavery has been practiced in Africa as well as in other places in the world throughout recorded history. But the magnitude that I shall be revealing to you as practiced by the Arabs and Muhammadans is truly mind-boggling. Between the 7th and 20th centuries, Arab slave trade took an estimated 18 million slaves from Africa via trans-Saharan and Indian Ocean route. Between the 15th and 19th centuries, the Atlantic slave trade took 7 to 12 million slaves to the New World. Please be aware, as we have clearly demonstrated in our chapter 20, Islam and African Slavery, that the Arabic name for the black Africans is the plural abid, meaning slaves. In other words, all black peoples are identified as slaves, abid, whether actually free or not. This title is without a shadow of a doubt obviously racist and discriminatory. Moreover, since most of the African peoples were animists, they were hence called unbelieving kuffar by the Muhammadan Muslims, and so were fair game for subjugation, enslavement, or extermination. By the way, this is the prerogative title used by racist South African whites when addressing a black person as kafir, which is the insulting Arabic singular for a native African in addition to their generic term of abd or slave. Now, in the 21st century, we watch with horror and disgust its continuing legacy where light-skinned Arabized Muslim Sudanese are slaughtering, raping, and terrorizing black Muslim Sudanese in Darfur. This is most definitely not religious discrimination, since both sides are Muslims, but is pure racism. The British Empire outlawed the slave trade in 1807 and abolished slavery in 1833. Between 1808 and 1860, the British West Africa Naval Squadron seized approximately 1,600 slave ships and freed 150,000 Africans who were on board. So-called believers and unbelieving kuffar, be aware that in 52 years, the average number of slaves freed is 2,884 per annum. One would think it is a small number. But the naval squadron was catching at most 5% of all the sea-bound traffic. Hence the number of slaves that were not freed must have been around 57,000 per annum, totaling almost 3 million unfortunate human beings. At all times, ladies and gentlemen, you should keep in mind that the people who were capturing, gathering, herding, transporting, and selling these wretched human chattel from the heart of Africa to its shores were Arabs and black Muslims. Now I shall let Muhammad's Quran indict itself with its discriminatory, hate-mongering, war-mongering, and racist verses. Al-Imran 3.56. As for those disbelieving infidels, Jews, Christians, and pagans, I will punish them with a terrible agony in this world and the next. They have no one to help or save them. Al-Ma'idah 5.17. In blasphemy, kafara, indeed are those that say that Allah is Christ, the son of Mary. Al-Ma'idah 5.51. O ye who believe, take not the Jews, Yahud, and Christians, Nasara, for your friends and protectors. They are but friends and protectors to each other. And he amongst you that turns to them for friendship is of them. Al-Tawbah 9.29. Fight those who believe not in Allah nor the last day, nor hold that forbidden, which had been forbidden by Allah and his apostle, nor acknowledge the religion of truth, even if they are of the people of the book, until they pay the jizya with willing submission and feel themselves humiliated. For those ignorant people among the followers of Muhammad who have not read, let alone studied the Quran, this verse alone was and is a unilateral declaration of war by Muhammad against the Jews and Christians, as well as all other human beings who do not believe as he does. Al-Nisa 4.76. Those who believe fight in the cause of Allah, yuqatiluna fi sabilillah, and those who reject faith fight in the cause of evil, yuqatiluna fi sabil at-taghuti. So fight ye, faqatilu, against the friends of Satan. Muhammad 47.4. Therefore, when you meet the unbelievers, alladina kafaru, smite at their necks. So-called believers and unbelieving kuffar. These are only a fraction of hundreds more of the same discriminatory, hate-mongering, war-mongering, and racist verses that are the alleged words of Allah that fill the pages of the Quran. Ladies and gentlemen, please be aware that not once throughout the last 1400 years have any followers of Muhammad protested against slavery, racism, or indeed any form of discrimination whatsoever, except when they themselves are either the victims or can pretend to be for their own personal gain. I have demonstrated conclusively that Sharia is racist, misogynist, immoral, unjust, and utterly out of touch with the reality of a human social progress. And Sharia is a major problem and obstacle for all of mankind, and so should be eradicated from this world. Ridding humanity of these horrific, debilitating, and primitive laws will not be easy, not least because millions of people have been indoctrinated to believe unquestioningly that they are demanded by Allah. But getting rid of them, we must. Please remember at all times, we are Ummat al-Kuffar, and Sharia is not for us.